Women Innovators. Interviews with women with big messages and big missions, sharing their stories to inspire you to live your passion and step up to make the world a better place. Here's your host, Tammy Patzer.
Hi, this is Tammy Patzer, and today's guest is Dorothy Kuhn. She helps entrepreneurs, professionals, and local progressive candidates go from invisible to invincible. They love becoming the inspiring leader they've longed to be, but until now, they just didn't know how. And they love the results they get in their business, their profession, and in their local community. And that's why I'm excited to have Dorothy tell you all about it. Welcome, Dorothy.
Hello, Tammy. It is a pleasure to be here.
I am really interested in this because leadership is something that in today's world, we obviously know what a good leader looks like, and we really know what a bad leader looks like. So can you tell me more about how you see leaders and who you help?
Oh, I sure can, and I love to talk about this. It's so much fun and enlightening. Have you ever wondered when people are talking back and forth to one another, and sometimes there are conversations, and we see this a lot in our public conversation around policies and politics and stuff like that, that most people just are thinking, goodness, will that ever go away? But we see like the conversations just going past one another like ships in the night.
Yeah, it's like they don't even pay attention or listen to the other person anymore.
Right.
Yes, and it's just a bunch of noise.
Yes. And so the thing that I wondered about this, I've got this really geeky science background. And so when I went from science into corporate America, I didn't do engineering or coding, so I couldn't compete with those hot tech designers. I had to go into management. Oh, darn it. And so, I found myself being really, I wasn't well schooled in management and all of those soft skills, and I had to be very purposeful about learning about this. And so it turns out there are a variety of ways in which you can understand it. The most powerful that I've found is to understand what are the moral frames behind what it is that people believe and say. And so if you want, I'll describe those just real briefly.
Oh, I'd love to hear that. Thank you.
You bet. So the research shows, and this was a big question that people had who observe our public conversations, where people are very much talking past one another and not really coming together and solving problems. And it has to do with their moral framework. It turns out that politics, for example, and culture, for example, those things, how people think about those things, not in their conscious mind, but in that deep subconscious part, are founded in a concept of the family. And all concepts of the family spring from a moral construct of some kind. So around the world, there are a handful of family models. And those, so for example, in the Far East, you may know that they have this reverence for elders that is very, very different from how we think of our elders here in the West, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's a different family model. Here in the West, we have two family models that dominate our culture, including our business culture, our corporate culture, and our political culture. And so one is called a strict father model. It's hierarchical. It's gendered. There's from the top to the bottom, there's the father, there's the mother, there's the kids. In this model, the kids are born bad. They just want what they want. And it takes discipline, physical discipline to get them to start to behave well and to internalize this moral model. The evidence in this moral model that they have become disciplined enough to self-discipline themselves is that they have done well in the world, and particularly that they've done well in building wealth. Ergo, the more wealthy you are, that's more evidence that you are a moral person. So from outside that model, you can see the logical fallacy there. From inside the model, you don't see it.
Yeah, I was just, as you were saying that, I'm going, so in other words, the model is that if you're wealthy, therefore you are right.
Yeah, you're the most moral person.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So when you're working with people, what seems to be, as they're trying to figure out their leadership model, and like you said, how to become invisible. And I know right now in the world today, many people do feel very invisible and very unheard. So how do you move from being invisible to invincible?
Well, you understand that moral model, but the other one that I'll just be real brief about, if I may, is called a strong nurtural model. That model, there's a mom and a dad. They're co-equal, but they have different roles. And they have to take good care of themselves because wimps cannot raise good children. Okay. And they take care of themselves and they nurture their children so that they grow up and go out and do the good that they are here to do in the world.
Okay, so you have
these two models, and it's really you can get a pretty quick sense of which model somebody is operating from, and we all hold both of those models. I mean, if you hold the strong nurtural model, for example, and you show up to, a Schwarzenegger movie and you understand it, well, then you hold that model. You get it, right?
Okay.
It may not be your favorite movie, but you understand it. And, vice versa. If you hold the strict father model and you show up to a romantic comedy and you understand what's going on, then you hold that model.
Oh, okay. I get it.
And people use those models. They'll kind of switch from context to context, which of those models is dominant for them. And so being able to size people up for that, not for the purpose of judgment, but really for the purpose of understanding, helps you understand how to respond in a way that will instantly raise your status, generate respect, and let you drive forward on the kind of business that you want to.
So do you have an example? So if I meet someone and I look at them and, and I can tell like if I met Donald Trump, who would he represent in those two models?
Of the strict father model.
Okay. Who would represent the nurturing model?
President Obama,
Oh, okay.
Hillary Clinton. You can. I mean, it's not hard to see which of those models our political parties here in this country line up with. And I'll be glad to give you an example of an interaction I had with a business owner.
Okay.
That's exactly like this. So. I work with mid-market companies oftentimes, and I hear a dog barking.
Yeah,
that's not
I'm
okay.
Sorry. I think what we're going to do with this is I'm going to have to interview you again for the show part because I don't know what she's barking at. So, but keep going.
Okay. So I'm in this fellow's office. I walk in. He's got a high quality, high caliber handguns and weapons on the desk, on the wall. He's got them all over the place. He loves to shoot. I knew this going in. Now I shoot, but just from time to time, at the range. Daddy taught us how to shoot.
Yes.
His first 3 rules were safety, safety, and safety. So, I'm comfortable there. I've worked in military systems for a big portion of my career. And when he kind of got wind that I'm a center left gal, he was like, with that attitude toward me. And so immediately I was able to step into that very power kind of energy and tell him a story about my work in military systems and, how I was, Texas Instruments. You'll see this in my bio. TI's, representative to Carnegie Mellon, working directly with the Department of Defense and every blah, blah. I went on and on. And, I'm looking at, his gesturing very powerfully toward his picture of fighter jets on the wall and such as that. And when we got up to, and so I got his respect right away, with that. And he was ready to blow me out of the water, but he had to respect that from his model. And then when we went to go back into his manufacturing area, I walked in with the most powerful walk that a person can do. And I teach people how to walk this way. And it is undeniable that before you open your mouth, people will size you up by how you present, the energy you carry, and the level of confidence and playfulness that you can bring to the interaction.
So, can you paint a picture of what a person who walks with confidence and high energy might look like?
Yes. So a person who walks with confidence and big energy is someone whose energy is fully contained in the core of their body. And I will tell you, for a long, long time, most of my life, I had no idea what those words meant because I didn't know how to put my energy within my body where I needed it to be. I have that level of energetic control now, and it's life-changing to get it. So I teach people how to do that. Another thing is to walk with slowness and measuredness. Okay. So that, and to walk in a way so that you do not step on your forward foot too soon. A lot of people will walk as though they're walking from their hips down. A powerful, elegant, meaningful walk is from the ribs down, and it's easy to teach. It takes a lot of practice to do it on a consistent basis, but it's doable.
So if somebody walks with a certain I don't want to say swagger, but it's a certain way of walking. Is it with your shoulders back, your head up? Is it, do you have an example of what a person who's a confidence who you would think?
Yeah, a good question. So from the ribs down, it's power. So the power chakras are, foundational chakras, and from the ribs up, it's relaxed and just carried on, on the magic carpet of that power from the ribs down.
Wow. I'm trying to visualize it. That's why I'm asking, because I'm trying to imagine. I mean, there's certain people that when they walk into a room, everybody looks.
Right.
And it's like,
yes.
And they don't have to be gorgeous or tall or good looking. They just have a presence.
Exactly.
That people feel. And so it's all heads turn. And they just notice that confidence and that look. So you actually teach people how to project their energy so that they have a what is it called, a countenance? When they have that energy and that power when they walk into the room.
So they have an inviting, powerful presence with a bit of fun and whimsy mixed in. Too much seriousness just spoils the soup.
I notice that because when I smile, people are very attracted to me, and they'll come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, I don't know what there is about you," and I think it's just because I'm smiling and I'm radiating this positive energy.
Right.
And people like that.
And you're a confident, you're a confident woman, and that confidence comes forward. So when people are wanting to step into leadership, they're going to be speaking to people, whether it's on teleconferences or one-on-one or leading teams or out in the community or wherever it is. And people feel comfortable and well held in wonderful, confident powerful energy, not overbearing energy, but powerful energy. And it's just delicious. Now, it's a tool. It can be misused, and we see that from time to time.
That's interesting. I wanted to ask you about you because I know that you've had experiences and you've said before that you would never guess that you would become an inspiring leader. And so I'm really curious on more about your background. Like, what did you really struggle with that fueled your path to learning how to lead with presence?
Oh, that is such a great question, Tammy. So I did my undergraduate work in physics and math. I got my first job out of college because I knew more quantum mechanics than anybody else. Geek.
Well, yeah, I always was on the side of once math went to A plus B equals C, they lost me.
Ah, yeah, and see that's like my home swimming pool, but I was very analytical. I lived in my head. I wasn't connected to my body at all, and yet I would test. In corporate America, we often do these various personality tests or preference tests, and so in the Myers-Briggs world, I would always test leadership, but it wasn't showing up in my life. And I was frustrated. My managers were frustrated. They could see potential, but it just wasn't showing up. And I've just set an intention. I felt like I was a leader inside, and I set an intention and asked questions. So the very next thing, this is such a powerful question to ask yourself when you're struggling or bumping up against any challenge, is to ask how. So I'd ask, how can I be a better leader? What do I need to learn to be a better leader? And I'll tell you, at some point, I thought I need to go back to graduate school for yet another degree. I already had one master's degree at that point. And at least I had the clarity to have that second thought, that inner voice and guidance that I listened to that said, Dorothy, it is not another academic degree that you need. You need to get to know who Dorothy is deeply.
Wow, that's really powerful. So when you first started, so you asked yourself some of these questions like, how do I do this? Do you have like a few things that you can share about how you started to discover how to become a better leader or how to lead?
Oh, yes. So in the family I grew up in, I came from a middle-class family. I didn't have models for really great leadership. And so the first thing that I did was just to read biographies of people who were great leaders, who especially those who came from unexpected origins. So I'm here in Texas. I read a couple biographies for Barbara Jordan. She was the first African American woman from Houston elected from Texas to the U.S. Senate. And she was just a powerhouse. I remember her from when I was a kid, and just what a powerhouse she was in the House. And so I was fascinated by her. And those are the kinds of biographies that I read, and that kind of fueled me for a bit. But I didn't know how to really model that. And so I would ask myself, who can I meet? And when I'd go, I had a long stint of contracting. I love going from one business to the next and kind of coming in like the Marines and fixing what needs to be fixed and moving on to the next engagement. And so when I was about to be moving on to the next engagement, I would ask myself, what is it that I need to learn? And I would set that as an intention for how to that would help me with criteria for what that next gig was. And then the third thing that I would do is that I stumbled into a variety of personal growth and development. So every year I invest in myself to become, the next best version of Dorothy. And that's a big part of what I bring to the clients that I have.
So to recap, you obviously you invest in yourself to always be improving, learning, and changing. You learned how to trust your intuition.
Yes.
And that was huge. And then you also looked for people who either would exemplify who you could be as a leader or people who could mentor you.
Yes.
That's really beautiful because I think, when you're able to model other people, that's really, really helpful. So the people who you have met along the way who've really inspired you, what kind of things have you sought out in your personal development training? What kind of questions, do you ask them and to help you? What have you found to be the most helpful?
So the thing, the daily practices, the daily practices that I learned over time include things that I just poo-pooed for a long time because they seem too woo-woo to my, sciencey self. And so, I earlier today, not only did I work out, not only did I take the dog for a walk, but I meditated and got quiet and got out of my head and let things settle and ask for, what's that inner wisdom that not just the tasks that I need to do today, but what do I really need to bring to those tasks so that they are joyful and fun and fulfilling and really help, can be a gift to other people.
I think that's really interesting that you said that about the woo-woo. Because are you finding that there's a shift today in corporate America or the corporate world about the woo-woo part? What is happening out there related to the acceptance of what you're talking about? You're talking about meditation, you're talking about exercise, listening to your intuition, developing all of these skills that maybe were not thought of to be leadership skills at some point. What's happening out there in corporate America?
So what's happening in corporate America is that people are stressed beyond belief. There's been a growing increase in the number of hours that professional people work. On a week-to-week, month-to-month basis. We live oftentimes, when we work in corporate America, we live in big cities, the commutes are long, and we live in the period of human history that is the most overstimulated in the history of mankind.
I believe that.
It's so true. And we're often cut off from nature. And for, up until about 100 years ago, we heard the sounds of nature almost 24 hours a day. The houses that people lived in 100 years ago were so rickety by today's standards that you would hear the birds and the bees through them and the whistle of the wind all the time. You couldn't not.
I live in town, but I live on acreage, so I'm always hearing everything from the crickets to the frogs to the birds.
Right. And that is, our physiology is wired for, thousands and millions of years to rest into that. That's calming for us. And so people are finding themselves over anxious and not thinking clearly and not performing well. And the whole mindfulness movement is very much, a step forward in being able to solve those kinds of personal problems, because you can't do well if you're all riled up inside.
Right. So as you've been on this leadership journey from invisible to invincible, what have been some of your setbacks that you've ran into or issues that you ran into or that you've seen other people run into?
The biggest one for me, and there are always setbacks in life, and I've learned to love the challenges of life, however they show up. But this one really just about scared the pants off of me. It was I was finding myself with the symptoms of the most vicious and pernicious of the chronic diseases that we have today. My own father was, I was in my mid-50s, and I was finding myself being more and more forgetful, not being able to think as quickly or as completely and figure things out. And I was managing big teams of people that were, on the U.S. and overseas. And it was just getting more and more difficult to do what had always been easy for me. And at that time, my own father was in the end of his life, dying from dementia. And I had this come to Jesus moment where I couldn't remember a conversation with my kids on Sunday that we had had just the day before at lunch. Thank you very much. And my daughter's looking at me like, and at that point, I knew I had to do something about it. And, I'd known from my dad that there are not any medical solutions to that. When doctors say they don't have anything, it's good to believe them. And so I went to some really reliable alternative folks whom I know. And now, I've got my memory back. I keep my good health practices on a day-to-day basis. And it turns out that the people that I help in the health space, they step back from diabetes. They don't have that anymore. Their medicine is cut in half, those kinds of things. And they wake up feeling better every day. I wake up every day feeling half my age.
Wow, that's pretty good.
It's amazing. And I never thought I'd get that because I was considered the healthy kid in the family. And then I thought, goodness, I've got to try anything I can.
So how long did it take to go from this issue of not being able to remember things to having results? And exactly what did you do to get those results?
So it's three things at a general level. One is what you put in your body, what you put on. Two is what you put on your body, and the other is what you do with your body. So, I changed my diet. I took out things that are common inflammatories. Sorry, I had a little tickle in the throat there. But common inflammatories, I took those things out and experimented to find which of those common inflammatories were causing a trigger in me. And those triggers, when they so let me just back up a little bit. It turns out that the thing that causes most chronic diseases is a degradation in your organ tissue, whatever organ it's showing up in. And so when you, so in my case, it was showing up in my brain, and how it shows up in the brain is your brain cells, instead of dying off very slowly as they normally do. I'm going to take a sip of water here. Pardon me.
Oh, no problem.
And so your brain cells, instead of dying off very slowly as they normally do and get replaced by new ones very slowly, every organ in the body does replace those cells, but for the brain, it's just really a slow process. So for that, the process of low-level inflammation will trigger that slowly over time, and it just builds up. And we think that, oh, I've got allergies. Pardon me. Things aren't working well for me. I don't have as much energy as I used to, but it'll show up in some organ or another. And oftentimes it'll show up as Oftentimes it'll show up as, if it affects your skin, which is an important organ in your body, the largest, it'll show up as a rash or an itch or something that way. In your brain, it doesn't show up until much later than you would notice it on your skin, because on your skin you have pain receptors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guess how many pain receptors you have in your brain?
I don't know.
Exactly 0.
Okay.
0. Yeah. So this is why brain surgeons, once they get through your skull, they do not need any anesthetics to do brain surgery.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So when your brain cells are dying off in some part of your brain, it'll get in the way of balance and sense of smell. Those kinds of things are the subtle things that show up first, and you will excuse those away. Oftentimes, I did.
Wow, that's really interesting because we had a talk about this in our first interview we did a while back. So that's really interesting. I want to go back to leadership.
Mm-hmm.
What is the number one thing that people must know about being an inspiring leader?
Gosh, the number one thing, this is such a great question, is really how to embody leadership, how to do that in a way so that people get you before you ever say a word.
Okay. So, and that goes back to that energy that we were talking about earlier.
It is, and that is a learnable skill. I'm a living witness that normal humans can learn it.
So that's part of what you offered people. I wanted to ask you about some of the, for the people you help, what exactly is the process that they would go through if they were working with you to become a leader, an inspiring leader? What would that look like? And what are some of the misconceptions about what you're providing?
So so that's a great question, and I teach people when they're in my programs. I teach them those moral models and how to work with people on various of those moral models, and use that as a beginning intro into the kinds of energy. Bringing the energy that you want to a situation, and the first of that is knowing what kind of energy you want to bring, what would be helpful in the situation. And then the second is really stepping into more of that embodiment piece, which includes yoga and meditation, includes cleaning up some unhelpful beliefs as a part of my personal development. I had a lot of just the normal variety of unhelpful beliefs that I needed to clean up. Made a huge difference in my life. I never would have guessed that, but it's true. Mm-hmm. And then, one of the bodies of work that I just love to bring in is Dr. Amy Cuddy's work on power poses. People who are powerful take up a lot of space.
Interesting.
They are high attention. And I will tell you, when you know how to create local star power, most people don't know how to create that. I didn't for a long time. But it's A, you know when to bring it, you know when to not. B, well, most of us do. And B, when you bring it, that you have convincing power when people are paying attention to you.
Interesting. So
yeah.
If someone's going to be working with you, why would they want to work with you, and why might they not want to work with you?
Well, they would want to work with me if they really want to be able to quickly size other people up for that understanding, not for judgment, so that they can have interactions with other people who they might have in the past perceived as more powerful, with fun and honor, in a way that's these social interactions, having some jousting that is good, clean fun. Uh-huh. is absolutely critical to being able to to hold your space. And building those skills just really lets you step into the kind of confidence that most people live their whole lives without ever having experienced. And it's so delicious to do that. They get to feel really full of energy and better than you have in years. As I mentioned, I wake up every day feeling half my age. It's a really good deal. And how to do the little things that kind of raise your status when you need to and make you the local star. So, for example, if you're, leading a meeting or speaking to a group of people, how to stand up on the stage in a way that all eyes are on you. People are attending to you and giving you their full attention. And really and how to help you build a tribe. This is kind of related to networking, but it's much deeper, to build a tribe of people who loves you. They love what you do and the value you bring and the way you do it, so that they are talking you up all the time, anytime they can and everywhere.
That's really interesting, because I was just going to ask you about some of the things that you could do to become the local star and to have people who will be your best advocates.
Yes, we need that. And particularly for those local, it's true in corporate life. It's true when you're an entrepreneur and you've got business partners and people who refer to you. You want to really build those. And when you're, doing something good in your community, then you really need that, particularly if you decide that you want to, be appointed to the planning and zoning or run for city council. You've got to have a lot of people who are just willing to drop things and go help you.
So part of what you do is you help people to develop that energetic presence that they become like a magnet that attracts.
Yes.
So what if somebody wants to work with you, but they're like, not really sure, what is the biggest issue about people who want to be leaders? What stops them?
The single biggest thing is that they're not clear on what they want. They have a vague notion of what they want. And they're not clear, not just on what they want, but on what it will do for those they love and care about.
Do you ever run into people who, and I know that we all run into these people, but they want everything handed to them on a silver platter because they don't have time, but then they don't want to spend the money, or they don't want to, or they'll spend the money, but they don't have the time. What do you find is the biggest obstacle for the people to step forward, beyond the fact that they don't? I think you're absolutely right. The fact that when you're not clear, it makes it very difficult to take time and to spend money on something. How do you handle that? If somebody really wants to do it, do you have a way to talk to them?
Oh, yes, I do. And, one of the things that we as human beings, it's such a normal human thing to do. When you are not clear about what it is that you want to accomplish, and that desire is deeply seated. It's not up in the part of the brain that we go to college for. That part of the brain does, the neocortex, it does features, benefits, and analysis, but it doesn't make any decisions. That's more deeply held. That's desire. And getting in touch with that desire in a really useful way is critical, because when you don't know what you want, you have no criteria by which to say yes and no. And if you're too busy, you are saying yes to too many things.
Okay, I get it. That makes sense. So a good leader actually will learn how to go inside and to access that deep desire, so that they know what their big why is, what their big mission is, what their purpose is. And then they're able to say yes only to the things that help them to move that purpose forward. Is that close?
Yes, that is very close. And that's why, the PreCourse Accelerator for every one of my programs is your irresistible future, really getting people clear on what it is that they want. I want them, when they're up at the top of the ladder, and looking out onto the next horizon of their lives. I want them to be happy that that ladder is leaning on the right building, the right mountainside.
So you actually you do something with them to evaluate where they're at and where they'd like to go?
Yeah, it's a whole course. My PreCourse Accelerator is a whole course that they get to do online. It's delivered as audios with worksheets, and it really helps them absolutely get clear on what it is that they need to do, or what's the most the desire of their soul. What is it?
Oh, that's really interesting, because I know that you've been a guest on television and radio and podcast, sharing all of your different stories. And so you work with people on, obviously you can help them with their energy and their focus and productivity, and then you have leadership. Can you tell me where we can find out more about you and your services?
Oh, yes. My website is my first name and my last name, DorothyKuhn.com. You want me to spell that?
Sure. That'd be very helpful.
Yeah, DorothyKuhn.com.
Okay, great. And go ahead.
They'll get something right away, just as soon as they put in their first name and their best email address. And it's a wonderful piece of work that really helps them. What are those 5 things that are those 5 steps to go from invisible to invincible? And that's an important place to get started.
So before I let you go, is there anything that you'd like to add?
The most important thing for people really to decide is what do you want? What do you want? And if all you have right now is this vague notion that I want to be a leader of some kind, and you probably have a notion of the area where you want it to be, then that's a great place to start. And that's always a great place for us to have a conversation. And once you sign up and get that 5 steps from invisible to invincible, then you'll have the opportunity to have a deep conversation to help you get clear on what's your best next move. But that comes second.
Okay, great. So, inspiring leadership tips, 5 steps from invisible to invincible at DorothyKuhn.com, DorothyKuhn.com. I really appreciate it, Dorothy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tammy. Talk to you soon.
This is Tammy Patzer. Make it a great day.
You've been listening to Women Innovators with Tammy Patzer. To learn more, please go to womeninnovatorsradio.com. And please do subscribe and share to spread the big messages and big missions to change the world.